Now, well, it's that time of the program when we bring our guest commentator. Joining me in the studio is the journalist and the rise analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Good to see you too.
Well, this means a whole lot to every Nigerian and every African, and that is why we're giving the entire show to what's happening. Paint for us a picture, because now ECOWAS will be meeting tomorrow here in Abuja again. And listening to Abu Zain, that's Ibrahim Zain Konji, he says, well, the regional bloc shouldn't think of military action, and that's almost the same coming from the streets.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very interesting conversation. Refreshing, actually. You can see that he has a lot of details concerning that particular country. He is very knowledgeable, and he shared a lot of information. And he also touched on quite a bit of big topics, whether it's colonialism, whether it's imperialism, whether it's the terrorism challenge, which I can talk more about. You know, yeah. It's important because seeing what is going on, you can see that there is a fundamental awareness that things have to change. How far-reaching that change will go and the form or shape it will take, we do not know yet. But coming from the streets, it's loud and clear. Those countries, people are fed up. And I'm happy you talked about insecurity. The level of terrorism is actually, let me use the word terrorism, the jihadist movement. You know, it used to be the Middle East, and so the terrorists left the Middle East and set up shop in Africa. So we have the Boko Harams, we have the Al-Shabaab, and then you have the Al-Qaeda that has affiliates in the Maghreb, in North Africa, and in West Africa. And so these countries have been suffering this for many years. And that is also why you have the US base there with over 1,000 military men, and the France base with over 1,000 military men as well. And people are watching, not only in Niger, in all these Francophone countries, and people are watching and saying, why do we have all these bases? And it looks like the counterterrorism fight is not working, like they're not winning the fight. And so there's loss of lives, there is further radicalization, there's economic devastation, there's humanitarian crisis, you cannot access health services, you cannot have access education. So you look at all of this and you're like, we're so fed up. But apart from that also, there are over 20 countries in Africa that have military bases of foreign countries in them. And so there is an ongoing awareness, which he talked about, that people are saying, can we do something differently? And so tomorrow for ECOWAS, yes, ECOWAS has taken a terrible flogging from the streets. Initially, they came up with a braggadocio, we're going to intervene, because they were speaking for someone else. And people were like, no, we are tired of the conflict. Can we find another way around it? And by the way, who are you fighting for? So we have to be dealing with the underlying issues, the real issues, and not just talking about the military coup. Yes, there is a military coup, but much more than that. Why is it happening? And what can we do about that?
I'm happy that now you're talking about the real issues, because that's something that the ECOWAS and even AU must not gloss over. And the real issues, again, as highlighted by Ibrahim Zain, he spoke about economic issues, and political issues coming from former colonial masters. And he also dropped a bomb saying that no African country that has been so colonized is actually free from its colonial masters.
Well, he doesn't need to say that. We see it every day. We have independence in name, but actually African countries are not independent. Why do you have to run to Western countries to receive affirmation when you're running elections? If the president is not approved from somewhere, you cannot become president. Why is that so? That is why people are saying you're all puppets. You actually replaced the colonial people. Who are you working for? Are you working for us, or are you working for foreign countries? That is a question now. There is that awareness. And people are punching and asking questions. What are we, or what are you going to do about this? It's not just talking about democracy. How would democracy work for me? Okay. So we've seen the exodus of Africans to Europe. We've seen Africans dying in their thousands in the Mediterranean Sea on top of rickety boats. Why is that happening? There is a reason, or there are reasons. More than 30 African countries in 2010 have been facing armed conflict. People are fleeing from conflict. Some are refugees. Some are economic migrants. People are looking for a better way of life. And then you go to Libya, you remove the president, you collapse the place, and that place becomes a crisis for the rest of Africa, because then you have people held there as slaves, in terrible situations, and then it's a route to go to Europe. In fact, it's almost human trafficking. Yeah, human trafficking happening now. So this conflict is everywhere in Africa. And people are like, what do we do about it? Yeah, so these are real issues. So we come back to ECOWAS. I'm happy you mentioned that ECOWAS is an economic bloc. It's very important because you need that economic bloc, and you need that economic bloc to prosper, to triumph. So he talked about, no, he's not here. Actually, the military junta in Niger has banned the export of uranium. Why did they do so? They've also begun to uncouple the military deals they had with France, because they're like, we'll take our chance and look for other partners, because so far this partnership hasn't been good for us. So are there other places we can look to? Let us even decide, make our own decisions. He said it. Most of these countries do not make their decisions. The decisions come from France. And you call yourself an independent nation. You're not independent. Maybe politically in name you are, but you're actually not.
It comes back to AU, the African Union, the leaders, because if you raise a very important aspect, and that is getting endorsement, affirmation from past colonial masters. Now you look at what is going on in Congo. There's hardly any device you hold in this world that you don't have something coming out of the earth in Congo. Now Congo, Niger, Chad, and all these countries. Now, how do we expect the African leaders to sit down and genuinely, because the question you ask is not rhetorical, it must be giving an answer to, who are you serving? Who are you working for?
So these countries, these foreign countries, are not going to give up without a fight. You saw the Undersecretary of Political Affairs of the US go to Niger to have a meeting with the military officials, and she gave the demand that President Bazoum be reinstated. There's a slim chance that's going to happen. She also suggested that they were very firm about what they wanted and the future that they see for their country. African countries need to begin to take decisions for themselves and control their territories, their space, and their resources. I mean, you don't go to Europe, for instance, and you decide for them their economic plan, their political plan, and run their system. You don't do that. It is only in Africa that people come and they run our institutions. And so is the person, yeah, there is something like collaboration. Yes, you can have a cooperation. But when it is not mutually beneficial, it is working against your interest, then you have to wake up. I think most of these African leaders also have no idea. They are the wrong people, because the processes that lead to them becoming president or leaders is so flawed. So they're not supposed to be there. They do not even understand themselves, let alone understanding the magnitude of the position and the office they hold. And then when, like he mentioned, other countries put you in power, you have to answer to them. So Africa needs to financially and economically thrive and do well. We're talking about the ECOWAS standby force. You cannot have a standby force when you're so poor. You cannot feed your population. People are barely surviving. You cannot, there's no way to do that. The European nations or countries, why is America so powerful? Biggest economy in the world. Why is China threatening everybody? Another big economy coming up. So you have to do well economically before you can talk about military power. We're here running up and down talking about nuclear power. How can you have a nuclear power where you don't even have money enough to feed your population? And this can be done. It has to do with a lot with mentality. A lot of Africans think they cannot do it. I think the colonialism and imperialism and the global economic setup is not in the interest of Africa. So it's difficult. And that is why you see countries like China, Russia, fighting that global economic setup that has been on for so many years to have a piece of the pie. Everybody is trying to have a piece of the pie. So Africans, it looks like, are awakening. It's going to be a long struggle, a lot of fight, but we cannot continue to be the begging bowl of the world. Everywhere we go, we are begging. Everywhere we go, we are begging. And yet, you have everything it takes within your continent to take care of your people and to feed your people and to even do more.
The next question will be, who should bear the cut? So many other Africans have tried to actually wriggle out of this grasp of colonial masters. You also recall Patrice Lumumba. It was just recently his tooth, after he was killed, was returned to his family. His tooth. You can talk about the names. We have seen lone stars on the continent that have dared to change the status quo you just spoke about, the same status quo Ibrahim Zain Konji spoke about. Who can take up this whole fight to free Africa?
There is power in people. In fact, the power belongs to the people, not the president. When the people realize that the power resides in them, the dynamics, the game changes. And hopefully that's what is happening in these countries. The people wake up and say, you know what? We are going to decide our lives. And we are going to decide who will be the president. He mentioned this so-called democracy. Democracy what? Democracy where you rig elections and you're a tyrant and you're in power forever, and then after that your son takes over. That's not a democracy. But if he serves other interests, then the democracy is affirmed and you carry on. So it's the people. And the awakening has to be there. If the awakening is there, it's going to be an ongoing long struggle. It will take them. This is a massive continent, mind you. And there is going to be, or there has always been, infiltrations all over, you know. But Africans have to decide that we want to do better. We are going to collaborate more. But Africa doesn't even shut out the world. The world can have a fair share of resources. We just want Africans to also have a fair share of their own resources. People pummel Africans all over the world, reject them all over the world. You are so poor. You understand all of that? So why can you not allow Africans to become a bit of what you are in terms of prosperity, in terms of doing well? You know, it's not difficult. So when people begin to take charge of their lives and decide, you know what, we want something different and we are going to make those decisions, then it happens over time.
Dr. Constance Ikokwu, I think you should build a cat first.
Build a cat. You should build a cat.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Many thanks for speaking with us as always.
You're welcome.